What's happening, financial coaches? Pete here. Hey, wanted to talk to you about how I believe that you should have an instinct to say, I don't know. And the trigger for you to say, I don't know, is when you don't know the answer. And this is kind of important because I think, especially in the world of financial coaching, there tends to be some insecurity that maybe we don't know as much as financial advisors or financial counselors have been doing a long time and those types of things. And I would say, I kind of suspect generally that's probably true, because there isn't licensing and, there, you don't even need a certification in many cases. And a lot of people from a lot of different walks of life come into this business. And true coaching, true financial coaching tends to be pretty hands off. It tends to be work as a catalyst for people's own motivation and energy to come together. So, what I want, though, to say is that having come from banking and financial planning, that there are many times when professionals, 20, 30-year veterans in the industry, that are required to do continuing education, that immerse themselves in the information, that look at the latest developments and the new laws and new rules and new products. And I will tell you, nobody knows everything. There are a lot of people who know a lot, but nobody knows everything. And for me, I think you tend to start specializing. And so there were lots of times, and I will tell you right off the bat, some of the things that I probably shy away from in terms of the conversation is, optimizing around Social Security. That it can be a whole practice in and of itself. And Medicare to Medigap insurances, those types of things, really specific to kind of the retiree crowd. But there are people that know those things inside and out and how they're priced and how the pricing is, fixed in different states, and the brokers that you have to go through and exactly how they work and the donut holes and, survivor benefits on Social Security. Basically, I know a little bit about it, but that wasn't my specialty. And so when people started to go there, unless it was going to be a pretty cursory conversation, I wanted the best for them. And I wanted to say, I'm not sure about that. Or I haven't even heard of that. I don't know what you're referring to, but I'd be happy to look into it or bring it up with someone who can. And this tends to be very tough for people when we are choosing a role that we think is kind of the expert or the guide or the mentor. We're supposed to be better positioned than people who are bringing up questions and maybe have even more knowledge than we do on some things, right? And yeah, I bring it up because the story is I was actually doing some coaching reviews. I was listening to some recordings of calls, and um, a coach was talking to a participant, and the participant was talking about some account she had, and she has this 501 account, and she said, are you familiar with that? And the coach said, yeah, yep, familiar with that. And I'm listening to the call, and I'm thinking, I don't know what that is, and I have a lot more experience, and that doesn't mean that she's heard of it and I haven't, but I just wrote that down in my evaluation notes, and I said, I'm not sure what a 501 is. I know what a 501A is, the tax code qualification for nonprofit companies, I believe. And I know that there are some kind of specific pension accounts that kind of have some of those numbers too. And, at one point I was thinking, is it a 501c3? Is that what she's thinking? Does she have a stake in some sort of charitable nonprofit, something like that? So I just kind of blew it off, but the coach said she was familiar with it. So I just continued to kind of listen. And at some point later in the call, the participant is digging through her paperwork to find it, and she says, "Oh, I found it. It's a 529 college savings plan," which now makes a lot of sense to me. It makes a lot more sense that someone in the retail world would have that. And I know what a 529 is. I don't know exactly which one she has, prepaid or prepaid tuition, or maybe just the savings plan. But then the coach said, "Oh, yes, that's what I thought it was." And the problem to me with that is that if she had said, "Oh, I'm not sure. I guess I'm not that familiar with it," that would have been a totally acceptable answer, because it doesn't look like anyone would have been familiar with it. And what it would have forced a participant to do is say, maybe that's not right, and kind of shuffle through her papers then, her statements then, and find it and say, "Oh, it's a 529. And a couple things happen at that moment. A couple things that happen that are much more beneficial than what I think happened. And I wouldn't say that any of these were blockbuster, tear the walls down, trust is broken type of thing. But if she had said that, it probably would have built some trust with the coach and saying, "Oh, that coach knew that I didn't have the numbers right. And then when I did find the right account, she was familiar with that, and so, oh, this person knows what they're doing. But what ends up happening is because we miss that opportunity to say, "Hey, I'm not familiar," or "I don't know," and I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I usually don't try to say that I'm skeptical of something. I just don't know. If I don't know, and then the conversation wouldn't have gotten to the point where now, when the participant pulls out the statement and says it's a 529 plan and says that was weird, and this is probably a little subconscious, but it was weird that the coach knew what it was, but I kind of messed up the number. And now maybe I have some reason to be skeptical that he or she is as good as they say they are, or I think they are. And so it's one of those things where it's going to actually build your credibility when you just say you don't know. And I think it's hard because we all want to think we know a lot, Dunning Kruger effect, and we want to put ourselves in the best light with our participants and clients. But there is a ton of value in just saying you don't know or clarifying. And if they're like, "Oh, you don't know about that? I use this type of product or technique or account or loophole or tax rule or whatever it is quite a bit," that's still okay. You just don't know everything about everything. I'm pretty proud of my background, but there are many times when I've been stumped. There are many times when people ask me about a company and I don't even know the company, and it's a headline company or a headline news article or whatever it might be. I mean, you're just not going to be Google of the world. On the flip side, and I'm thinking that I wasn't listening to these back to back, but on the flip side, I was thinking about an experience I had with another financial coach, and he had gone into a meeting with a participant who wanted to use a 1031 exchange on some real estate. And the coach had never heard of it. And he told him, I'm not familiar with that. And he reached out to me and said, "Hey, are you familiar with the 1031 exchange?" Which, yes, I knew a little bit about, and having had some experiences with real estate investments, I kind of quick gave him the preview of it. I'm not an expert on it. I know some people use it fairly frequently, or as frequently as the rule allows. But he got his information, went back to the client and talked about it and gave him some information and some resources. And the client was really happy with that. And what I think happened there is that it went very smoothly, where in our minds we play it up that if I say I don't know what a 1031 exchange is, he's going to roll his eyes and walk out the door and be like, "Well, why was I even working with that guy?" And I just don't think that's the way it is. Our expectation, the image that we have in our mind, is often worse than the reality. And the reality is that when you say you don't know what something is, when you say you're going to go and find the answer or do some research or bone up on it a little bit or whatever it is, sharpen the blade on it, maybe ask an expert, or maybe even say, if that's not something I can kind of guide you through, I'd be happy to make a referral. All of those things add value, but what doesn't add value is lying about it, or being evasive about it and wasting their time and wasting the moment that you have with them, and kind of trying to dance around it. And so, all of those things, when it comes to the participant saying, "Hey, am I going to continue working with you? Am I going to continue to be your client?" These are the little things that go into those decisions that I think are important. You want the clients to know what experience you have, and you want to have a really honest relationship with them. So, I just see people trying to dance around certain things and, puff themselves up to be sometimes more intellectual than they are, or more informed than they are, and just embrace what you've got. Just embrace it. The best people in the industry know their strengths and weaknesses, and there is no harm in saying you don't know, because the irony of it is it can actually build trust and rapport with your client. So that's my thought on it. So know when to say no, know when to say I don't know, or I'm going to get back to you on that, or I'd love to look into that, or I'm not familiar with it. Whatever the phraseology you want to use, just know when to say it. And when to say it is when you don't know. Spoiler. So that's it for today. See you later.